Andy Bannister wonders why humans are so curious, then misses the mark entirely. It's just another excuse to take a backhanded swipe at atheists without having the slightest idea what the hell he's talking about. Because that never happens, right? So, here we go with more Andy stupidity incoming in 3, 2, 1. It's been a while since we looked at Andy Bannister, and this time he wants to explain why atheists shouldn't be curious. Instead, I'd like to suggest an alternate view. It's Christians who shouldn't be curious. Their theology shows that ought to be the case. The fact that they are says a lot of bad things about their beliefs. Because getting it all completely ass backwards never happens with religion, right? So, let's go take a look.
Andy, I've often wondered, if atheism is true, why are humans such a curious species?
What does this have to do with atheism? Seriously, that seems to completely come out of left field, doesn't it? It's like Andy is looking for some way to take a snipe at atheists in most of his videos. So, Andy, if atheism is true, how do you make a good lasagna? It just seems bizarre. But let's see what Andy has to say.
Do you know, Alan, that's a question I've thought about a lot over the years. It's a really important one, and I think a real challenge for atheism. You know, we're having this conversation, recording this video here in Dundee, in Scotland, and Dundee is known and advertises itself as the city of discovery. Why does it do that? Well, in the middle of Dundee is this wonderful historic ship, the Discovery, and you can go and visit it. Very, very beautiful historic ship. What was the Discovery? Well, that was Robert Falcon Scott's ship that he and his men sailed on in 1901 down to Antarctica to this amazing expedition to first explore that great ice-locked continent in the south. And one of my pride and joys on my desk sits this little piece of wood that's actually from the Discovery. They were repairing her a few years ago and then sold off bits of the old wood.
Okay, what does that have to do with anything? It's just Andy saying, "Oh, look, I have a chunk of wood from a ship." So what? Get on with it!
Get on with it! Yes, get on with it!
Oh, I am enjoying this scene.
Get on with it!
And every time I kind of look at this, every time I go and visit the ship, I find myself thinking, what was it that drove them?
Curiosity. The drive to discover what's out there. Now, I know that Andy is going to start asserting that there's no reason for atheists to go out looking for anything, but I find that's completely backwards. There's no reason for Christians to go looking. Why? Because according to them, this life is transitory. It doesn't matter. It's just a practice run for heaven. What happens here is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what's over the next hill unless it's some heathens that you can convert to your religion. Atheists, and remember I'm speaking very generally here, but we have a reason to go out and see what's there because what's there matters. This life is all that exists. We have to make the best of it. But for the religious, this life is wholly irrelevant according to their theology. So why would they be curious at all? It makes no sense to me.
To visit Antarctica back then, there was no GPS, no computer technology, very basic kit, no radio to call for help. It was like, as one person said, going to Mars would be today, but something drove them. And that drive to explore, to search, to pursue things just beyond, the everyday is the story of the human race throughout history. One of my other kind of passions when I'm not sort of talking about these kind of big questions has been researching the history of the British Everest expeditions in 1921 through to 24. My pride and joy on my bookshelf is this first edition of the expedition reports, most expensive book I own. And again, I read, this, and I find myself thinking, why did those those explorers go to Everest, it costs them time and energy, it costs some of them in their lives. And the same goes true to today.
Get on with it!
You know, the movie The First Man has just come out, telling the story of, the Apollo 11 mission when Armstrong and the others, went to the moon for the first time. Incredibly dangerous, astronomically expensive. Or, you look at the movie Free Solo that I just watched. That's the story of the first free, rope-free rock climb of Yosemite's El Capitan rock face, 3,000 feet of granite. And you watch that movie, you watch Alex Honnold climb that, and you think, why are you risking your life to do this? And all these questions get us back to the same point.
That you're wasting time? Oh, right. Shh.
Why are human beings so curious? And the problem for atheism is if the only thing that explains humanity, if the only game in town, to quote Professor Richard Dawkins' words, is evolution, well, the only thing evolution is concerned with is that you can feed yourself, that you can find a mate, that you can reproduce and pass your genes and DNA on to the next generation and your kids. That's all that matters.
And part of doing all of that effectively and efficiently is making good use of your surroundings. What's the point of struggling to survive in a resource-poor environment if over the next rise is a verdant paradise? We go looking to better ourselves and our surroundings. We do it so that we can learn. We do it so that we can grow. But honestly, explain why Christians would do it. What drives a Christian to go explore when their religion tells them that nothing that happens here matters? Christians shouldn't be curious except as a means to spread the gospel. I think we're past that today for the most part. So please, explain it to us, Andy. Open up the taps of your wisdom.
But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look around at humanity and go, that does not describe what drives human beings. We explore, we want to discover, we want to see what's over the next horizon. We are inexorably curious. I think atheism utterly fails to explain that.
Except I just did. The little things. Evolution drives us to expand to new horizons and discover new things because in so doing, we can better our situations and improve our chances for survival. That's how evolution operates. The best adapted species in any given ecological niche wins. Exploration opens up new niches. It provides a better opportunity for survival. If a devastating plague wipes out humanity in one area, the humans that moved over to the next valley, they're probably not going to be affected. Some humans die, but the species overall survives. It's very clear that Andy has no idea what evolution is. Why is that not a surprise?
What does the Christian worldview say? Well, the Bible addresses that directly. In the book of Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament, the scriptures say that God has placed eternity into the hearts of humankind. We're designed for asking big questions. We're designed for trying to find out, the next discovery, to look over the next horizon.
You haven't read the Bible, have you? The Bible is very clear that Christians are to listen to the voice of God, and that will be sufficient for all things. I mean, just look at Matthew 6:34, which reads, "Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." That's telling people not to be curious. Don't worry about what tomorrow brings. Focus on the present and let tomorrow worry about itself. Worry about where you are today, not where you will be tomorrow. Depend on God, because God will provide. Andy apparently doesn't know that. What else is new?
But more than that, also in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, it says that human beings were created in the image of God. We bear the imago Dei, to use a theological term. And that means that there is something of the Creator built into us, his creatures.
Which makes no sense. Curiosity cannot be a logical trait of God, because God already knows everything. What is there for him to be curious about? Honestly, are you listening to yourself, Andy? This is why people laugh at you. Do better.
And I think that's partly where this desire to pursue truth, to explore knowledge, to look for things that are bigger come from, because God hasn't just designed us for survival and reproduction. He's ultimately designed us for the biggest quest of all, not the next mountain or the furthest planet we can get to, but can we discover a relationship with the God who created this incredible universe for us to discover, but at the heart of it wants us to go on the ultimate quest for a relationship with Him.
But don't you think you already have that? I mean, isn't that what being a Christian means? You've discovered this relationship with God. You might not be perfect at it, but at least you think you're on the right track, according to you people at least. So you found it, and if having that relationship with God is all that matters, then why are you looking anywhere else? Why go exploring when you've already got that relationship to work on? It makes no sense. But this is religion, so it doesn't have to make sense, right?
Jesus said, those who seek will find. That's the greatest journey, and I hope people watching this, if they haven't discovered that relationship with God who put this world together, their curiosity would drive them to open up the Bible, to discover Jesus, and see what that ultimate quest looks like.
Which has absolutely nothing to do with exploring the world around you, does it? It has nothing to do with your personal collection of artifacts, Andy, because your own words tell us why those things are just pointless to pursue. Christians shouldn't be curious. They should just sit around in one spot and spend all of their time talking to their imaginary friend. That's all that matters. Andy says so. It's the ultimate journey. So the question is, why would Christians ever be curious about anything? What's the theological point? Because this really indicates that Andy is wrong. The fact that humans are, by and large, driven to see what's out there, to expand, to grow, to get better and know more, that doesn't show that their God is real. It shows that evolution is. It is focusing on the physical world to the detriment of the spiritual one. And if you really took Christianity seriously, then you would spend all of your time sitting in church, praying to God, and believing that God will provide. After all, Matthew 6:25-34 spells it all out. It says, in part, "Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet our heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they?" So why be curious about the real world? God will fill your belly and take care of you. The Bible says so. I trust you're not saying that the Bible could be wrong. Or maybe, just maybe, you just have no clue what the hell it is that you're talking about, Andy. Because that never happens, right? Maybe you just lack the capacity to think about your beliefs rationally or to evaluate evidence without regard for the goal that you desperately want to reach. We see this all the time. It's why Christians and other religious lunatics are such a laughable bunch. They don't understand how the puzzle pieces fit together. It really isn't that hard. Try it with your eyes open sometime. You might reach a more rational outcome.
Bum